Before the bombs fell, Vault-Tec was already planning for the end of the world, not just how to survive it, but then how to reshape what was left in their image. At the center of that plan was a device called the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, or GECK, a terraforming device designed to take a dead world and turn it back into something livable. Not gradually either, instantaneously, with science. Everything you could possibly need, all sealed inside a single briefcase. Across the Fallout series, the GECK has appeared in 2 different forms with very different outcomes, but the idea behind it stays pretty much the same. It's a complete toolkit for restarting civilization, and that creates a bit of a problem, because if equipment like this existed before the Great War, then why wasn't it used to prevent it? First, let's take a proper look at what a GECK actually is, because right now it sounds a bit like a magic box, and it really isn't. Essentially, the Garden of Eden Creation Kit is a terraforming device created by FutureTech, a division of Vault-Tec Corporation. It was designed to help Vault dwellers make use of the post-nuclear wasteland, giving them somewhere to live on the surface, as well as giving them land to farm, clothes to wear, and knowledge to read. Lots and lots of knowledge. It was first mentioned in the Vault Dweller's Survival Guide for Fallout 1, though it didn't appear until Fallout 2. According to the guide, when Vault-Tec gave the all clear, it was time to grab a GECK and go up top. The kit included a base replicator unit that could produce food and other essential supplies, and all you had to do was add water. It was fueled by cold fusion, designed to last over 1,000 years, powering an array of matter energy replicators, water purifiers, atmospheric stabilizers, and systems for seed and soil restoration. While the Fallout Bible is considered semi-canon, it does state that a GECK could possibly fertilize select areas of the moon's surface. An odd thing to boast about, but it does hint at what a certain faction might have been getting up to, which is a video for another time. Also included in the kits was a holodisc reader containing a vast library of information. As a bonus, the kit came with a miniature pen flashlight, though it was not suitable for children under the age of 3, who could receive a different toy at the purchaser's request. Vault-Tec even marketed the GECK with the same cheerful confidence it used for the rest of its pre-war products, claiming that even in the event of total global annihilation, a properly functioning GECK would create an earthly paradise. They also said 4 out of 5 nuclear scientists recommended the Garden of Eden Creation Kit over other leading survival kits, although the game never explains what those competing kits actually are. I imagine they were less about base replicators and holodisc readers, and more focused on practical survival gear like PPE and anti-rads. Advertisements for GECKs are also mentioned by Slim Pickett in Fallout 2, who claims they appeared in old magazines. Why Vault-Tec would publicly advertise something so advanced, especially technology powered by cold fusion, is difficult to explain. The ads were probably not intended as commercial products for public sale, rather as promotional material highlighting scientific breakthroughs and technological advancements. Now, I did mention that the GECK was created by FutureTech, but it was actually created by a singular man called Stanislaus Braun, the director of Vault-Tec's Societal Preservation Program. Marketed as a miracle solution for rebuilding a world devastated by nuclear war, the GECK was ultimately designed around educated guesses about what life after the apocalypse would look like, since its creator had no real way of knowing what challenges survivors would face. Braun himself showed little interest in the surface world, retreating instead to his own private shelter, Vault 112, where he trapped his residents inside a simulation indefinitely. As for the GECK itself, it has officially appeared in 3 Fallout games, with both miraculous and catastrophic results. Now, as grand as the outcome can be, all of the components are surprisingly packed into a single silver briefcase. Sometimes it has just the abbreviated name printed on the front, other times it includes Vault-Tec's logo as well. As we already know, Vault-Tec owned the technology, and the GECK was meant to be standard issue for every vault. Once activated, the device was designed to be gradually taken apart and used to build a functioning settlement, with the cold fusion power, for example, being repurposed for large-scale city power. Everything else you needed was already included in the device, so in theory, as long as radiation hadn't scrambled your brains, you could pretty much jumpstart civilization. There was also a range of additional schematics and instructions, from Vault system codes that allowed the production of extra jumpsuits and weatherproof gear, to force field designs and methods for constructing adobe buildings from raw materials. It even covered chemical processes for producing sandcrete and instructions for dismantling parts of the vault itself to repurpose in rebuilding civilization, computers, turrets, fences. The pen flashlight is basically a bonus item, probably meant for the early exit through the cave system that most vaults were built inside of. Despite GECKs initially being meant for every vault, in truth only specific vaults were selected. Those that were approved were issued 2 GECKs as part of their standard inventory package. Even for those chosen vaults, however, there was no guarantee they would actually receive their full share. Vault 8, for example, received a single GECK along with a batch of water chips that were supposed to be sent to Vault 13. Meanwhile, Vault 13 received their extra GECK that was originally meant for Vault 8. I'm sure there's more instances of this happening in the world, but this was the only instance I could find involving GECKs. Vault 87 also received a GECK, but this one is a little different to those mentioned thus far. This one is capable of collapsing matter within a given radius and recombining it into a living landscape to begin anew. That description is very different from the previous GECK that we know of, suggesting there is in fact more than one type. And that idea is supported by Fallout the role-playing game, specifically in the Once Upon a Time in the Wasteland story. In that adventure, the use of a GECK is described as destroying all life within its radius. It even includes a conclusion segment where activating the device results in the player character sacrificing themselves to create what is then referred to as the Promised Land in the Commonwealth. If that interpretation is accurate, then this GECK inside Vault 87 may only function safely at a distance, or alternatively requires a living sacrifice to initiate the terraforming process, with a person's biomatter serving as the catalyst for a new Garden of Eden. This would suggest 2 distinct versions of the device, a standard GECK designed to repurpose existing materials within a vault, and a far more extreme variant that can operate in barren environments without water or infrastructure, making it potentially better suited to places like arid wastelands or even far-off world locations, like the moon, although it might come with a sacrificial crutch. As for the vaults that actually received their GECKs, there's quite a few. In Fallout 2, the people of Arroyo passed down stories of the Holy GECK, which they believed to be a sacred object capable of turning the wasteland into paradise. With their homes suffering a severe drought, failing crops, dying livestock and sick children, a GECK became essential to their survival. The Chosen One eventually discovered that not all vaults received GECKs, and those that did not always receive 2. Vault 8 was given a single GECK, which it used to build Vault City. Vault 15 also received a single GECK, which was used to establish Shady Sands. In the beginning, the results were not that impressive, a few adobe buildings and some crops, but within roughly 80 years, those fragile beginnings grew into a thriving settlement, and the creation of the NCR. Vault 13, meanwhile, received 2 GECKs, but never used them. One was stolen by the Enclave during the Vault's invasion, while the other was left behind and can later be awarded to the Chosen One for helping the Intelligent Deathclaws. After Control Station Enclave was destroyed, survivors from Vault 13 and the tribals from Arroyo were left stranded with a GECK and nowhere to go on account of both of their homes being destroyed by the Enclave. Together, they formed a new settlement called New Arroyo. The tribal's survival skills, combined with the Vault Dwellers' technical knowledge, created a strong foundation, and the settlement would eventually grow into a major city, with the Chosen One serving as their ruling elder. By 2281, Arroyo has become a part of the New California Republic, showing how a single GECK in the right hands, with the right people, can build a functioning city in a relatively short window. While the West Coast shows the GECKs being used as a tool for rebuilding on a local scale, its role on the East Coast has taken on a very different shape. In Fallout 3, the GECK appears in a more unstable and experimental way, with only one known GECK in the entire region, found inside Vault 87. Although they were not able to use it, cut content reveals one of the reasons why. The Overseer's terminal would have included a note stating that a direct nuclear strike on the entrance to Vault 87 had made it impossible to continue the scouting reports outlined in Vault-Tec's operations manual. The main door was damaged beyond repair, and extremely high levels of lethal radiation were detected both outside and in the entry tunnel. That explains why the vault door is inaccessible, and why the back door has to be used by the Lone Wanderer. The other reason the residents of Vault 87 did not get around to using their GECK is because they were experimenting with FEV, turning the residents into mutants. The standard security measures were not enough, and after a year of the vault being sealed, the subjects broke free and took control, leaving the GECK to sit in storage for 200 years. The reason the Lone Wanderer was after a GECK was because Project Purity called for one. The power source was one of the key reasons it was wanted, as standard generators simply couldn't sustain the energy required to purify the tidal basin. The GECK's cold fusion reactor, however, was capable of powering massive, region-wide operations. On top of that, its matter reconstitution systems could break down and rearrange matter on a subatomic level, allowing the team to effectively remove severe radiation and chemical contaminants from the water. Just as importantly, its scalability meant that while normal water purifiers could only handle small amounts at a time, the GECK allowed the entire process to be expanded to an industrial level. With it, the Capital Wasteland gained a near limitless supply of clean drinking water. Although I guess it does have its limitations, because if you do as John Henry Eden asks and taint the water with FEV, the virus persists and kills anyone with mutated cells.
Sadly, when selected by the sinister president to be his instrument of annihilation, the Wanderer agreed. Humanity would be preserved, but only in its purest form. The waters of life flowed at last, but the virus contained within soon eradicated all those deemed unworthy of salvation. The Capital Wasteland, despite its progress, became a graveyard.
The last known documented use of a GECK in a failed capacity was inside Vault 94. The GECK found in Appalachia was part of a larger experiment, with the vault opening to outsiders roughly 1 year after the bombs fell. The dwellers were a pacifist community focused on agriculture and sustainable living, and the vault was designed around cooperating with survivors on the surface instead of fighting them. However, when the vault door opened and the outsiders entered, the situation deteriorated. The residents were slaughtered, and deeper sections of the vault were damaged. After reaching the part of the vault where the GECK was stored, the intruders believed the GECK was some kind of mind control device, on account of the residents being too friendly. And so, naturally, they shot it with a minigun.
The hell's that?
A lot of rads here, boss.
Lucas, check the terminal.
On it.
These people are nuts. No weapons, nothing. They didn't even try to fight back.
I ain't complaining. Hell of a score.
Sure, but all that work to get in here? And what do we find? A frickin' briefcase?
Boss, terminal says it's a GECK, Garden of Eden creation kit.
I don't know, some religious crap.
This ain't no idol. Come on. And what's with all the rats?
Radiation, huh? You know, boys, I think this here's some kind of a mind control device. It's what drove all those saps crazy.
Mind control? You serious?
You got a better explanation? I'm already feeling a little off. Now let's just waste this thing and get out of here. Red, light it up.
You got it.
No, wait!
This damage triggered a meltdown of the GECK's fusion system, resulting in a massive nuclear explosion. The systems regulating the vault's ecosystem failed, and dense red vines began spreading outward from the vault's entrance, rapidly taking over the surrounding region, choking out existing vegetation, and transforming the area into the mire, a swamp-like ecosystem dominated by aggressive overgrowth. As you can see, if used properly, a GECK can turn a wasteland into a home. Used carelessly, however, and it's capable of doing a lot of damage. But imagine, if you will, a world where Vault-Tec didn't keep the technology for themselves, and instead decided to monopolize the world without starting a war. In theory, the technology behind the GECK doesn't just have post-war applications. In fact, they might have had the ability to stabilize collapsing resources before they reached breaking point. The Great War in Fallout was driven by escalating resource scarcity during the resource wars. Oil shortages, failing agriculture, and rising geopolitical pressure pushed global powers into conflict, and once those systems began to fail, nuclear war followed. If the principles behind GECK technology had been developed and shared before the collapse, it's possible the Great War, and to an extent the resource wars too, might never have happened. The GECK relies on advanced micro and cold fusion systems. In Vault applications, this provides long-term self-sustaining power. If technology like this had been more widely developed before the war, global dependencies on oil might have been reduced, removing one of the key pressures behind the conflict. GECK systems are also designed to restore damaged soil and stabilize environments for habitation. Scaled beyond Vault use, this kind of technology could have eased agricultural decline during the late pre-war crisis, slowing the breakdown of the already fragile food supply chains and keeping the nation fed. Instead of competing over dwindling resources, societies could in theory have shifted towards systems of restoration rather than extraction. In that sense, GECK technology starts to look less like a survival tool and more like a different way of solving scarcity altogether. Vault-Tec, being the one company with this power, could have turned their corporation into a global titan, where every person on Earth consumed water cleansed by their technology, ate food grown in soil purified by their machines, and used tools, equipment, and transportation all powered by their cold fusion. Of course, none of this happened. Maybe it was too costly to make, or too difficult. Maybe the margin for error was too high, or maybe Vault-Tec was simply too greedy. A pipe dream, I admit, but the technology existed, it's just a shame the right people couldn't use it in time. Be sure to show your support by liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already for more Fallout content. If there's anything you'd like to see in a later video, leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. With that said, thank you, as always, for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.